Hey Shanny, hey Neil, how's it going?
Hey,
Okay.
How you guys feeling with your film being released?
Woo.
excited,
Yeah. I
relieved.
mean, yeah, it's in the world.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Mhm.
Definitely.
So I love to hear if you guys can just elaborate about your working history together and like I know you guys also made like a short film in the past. I would just love to hear about that.
You want to start or you want me to start?
Yeah,
This
so
is how the conversation starts.
yeah, Channing and I met about 10 years ago in March of 2010 at USC at the I guess right in front of the elevators, the editing lab, the bottom basement floor. At the time, Channing had just shot her thesis film and was looking for additional editing help, and I think it just finished like third semester doc production, which is what 546. Okay.
47.
546 or 547, yeah, finished 547. And so I was looking to edit a narrative film, and so a mutual friend of ours connected us, and we kind of just been like, you know, together ever since. And so we initially worked on that project together, and then I came on and ended up doing post work on that film and helping with reshoots and festival strategy, and basically like came on and helped produce the rest of the movie. And then for my thesis film at USC, Channing produced my thesis film. So that was already like two films that we'd done together. And then when we finished film school, it was like, okay, well, we want to make a movie. What movie should we make? And Channing had written what would become Miss Juneteenth. So we left LA and moved to Texas and started doing research on Miss Juneteenth. And that's, that's where we are now.
Yeah, I think early on when we met, we discovered that what we had in common was we were both making these stories about Black folks, like really human stories about Black folks in the South that had some kind of historical component or cultural component. I mean, they were all cultural no matter what.
Right.
Like, we were like culture, so we bonded over that, and then that's how initially we started working together and working on each other's films. And we became each other's trusted person as far as like being able to look at each other's art and give notes on each other's art, and being able to we were each other's person that when we would collaborate, we could say, I know especially during Miss Juneteenth, if there was a scene that got challenged for any reason, like budget, losing the location, anything, time, I could go to Neil and say, do you think that we can lose this, like, or is it something that I need to fight for, and he's the person that knew the script, as well as I did, and could say, I think that thematically we're okay because we have this.
And I mean, I also add that that's true that we were there together, but we also were fortunate and we had really strong partners creatively and our
Yeah, we
producing
did.
partners who were really also able to help us like construct the film so that those important moments were protected. But like at any time, you're going to get to a point where, you just run out of time, right? And you have to make those decisions on what to cut. So, I mean, I think there was a trust Chan I had from like the decade we've been working together. That was always something she leaned on. But we also had great partners, all our collaborators actually that we trusted and worked with.
Wow, that's awesome. Channy, can you talk about how you came up with the idea for this film and just like your writing process for the script?
Yeah, it's interesting because I've talked a little bit about this in interviews. So, excuse me if I'm being redundant, but, I grew up with Miss Juneteenth. It's a local scholastic beauty pageant that features young African-American women vying for a college scholarship. And so it was formative for me, because I got to see all these beautiful women that, and talented, intelligent women that look like me. So it's something that's just stayed with me. And Juneteenth has always been such a big part of my life because I'm from Texas, and it's, commemorated here every year. And it's always a big deal, just like parades. And, I don't want to ruin the film, but it's just like a big deal. And so I didn't realize really until I went outside of Texas, that people really didn't understand the concept of what Juneteenth was. And for anybody here who's unfamiliar and haven't seen the film, Juneteenth really is the fact that the slaves in Texas didn't find out they were free until 2 years after everyone else. So the Emancipation Proclamation happens in 1863. Slaves in Texas didn't find out until June 19th of 1865 that they were free. And so we commemorate it here every year in Texas, you know, to remember our ancestors. And Neil put a, you know, has a great way of describing it. What is it? June plus 19 equals Juneteenth.
Oh yeah, right.
Um, but basically, it's just something that was the fabric, you know, in the fabric of my life. And when I was thinking about ideas for a first feature, you know, it struck me and said, I wonder what happened to, you know, I knew where most of the Miss Juneteenths went because I'm from kind of a close knit community. But I was like, I wonder what happened to certain, you know, certain folks that we don't quite know. And that's how Miss Juneteenth was born. You know, I was wanted to do a story on this Black woman who has this dream deferred, you know, who finds in a way to, who finds a new dream.
And with this film coming out at such a pivotal point in America's history, you know, especially, you know, now with the fight against social injustice, and, you know, this year, especially this Juneteenth felt like no other. You know, the amount of awareness for the holiday and like this celebration was so immense. What's your thoughts about that and the importance of this film centered around, you know, this beauty pageant, you know, being taking place during this holiday? Can you talk about that?
You want to talk about it? Or you want
to... You can do it.
You know, I mean, it's interesting because like we have been, you know, we shot the film last summer and thematically, you know, we're navigating, you know, some of these consistent and persistent issues in the African American community, just like about, you know, ownership and gentrification and like legacy and, you know, being able to protect and pass things down to our kids, you know. And so I think right now it's been hard. I'll just speak for me, you know, and then you can, you know, speak for you. But it's been hard for me, you know, to kind of navigate you know, being entirely like focused on getting a film out into the world when these tragedies are happening right now. You know, like it's just really for Black people right now, it's about our survival. But in a way, you know, the film, I felt more of a sense of determination to get it out into the world, especially after these tragedies happen and like Black voices are being amplified, you know, in a way. And I was just hoping that, you know, Miss Juneteenth can contribute to those, you know, to would become one of those voices, you know, to kind of talk about our film is very much about the humanity of Black life, you know, and it just is. And so I definitely was grateful that the film was going out into the world because like who better to tell our stories than from our perspectives, you know, about the humanity of who we are, you know, as Black people.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think it was a little bittersweet, but exciting. It's exciting the film's coming out, but just extremely bittersweet that it kind of took not only the pandemic, but then also the George Floyd situation and the protests and the, you know, everything for there to be like a moment to reflect on some of the bigger, you know, dynamics of racism that are in the country. You know, that kind of felt really, it was like, I guess I kind of was fluctuating, and I speak for myself, between like feelings of anger, numbness, and kind of like hopefulness, real. Right? And it was, and so then we're making a movie through that, or releasing a movie through that. So it was kind of a, you know, bunch of stuff. But I think that if you know, if someone can watch the film and find hope in it, like that's amazing. You know, I love the movie, and I love that, you know, you get a chance to see like a story that's like dipped in history, but is very present and with people dealing with day-to-day kind of reality. So I hope that it can be something for viewers.
Yeah. Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, I absolutely adore this film. It was like it was so good, and it had such a classic feeling to it. and like such thought-provoking themes. And what I really loved about it was the performances from Nicole Bihari and Alexis. They were incredible. And they were rich and they were deep and it felt so honest. Can you talk about creating this relationship, this authentic daughter-mother relationship, and what was your process of like building this chemistry on set? And furthermore, can you discuss about working with first-time actor and Alexis?
I really, Alexis got a chance to read with Nicole before we, obviously before we cast, and I could see the chemistry between them. So, we were really excited about that. But I really feel like, and I think they got a chance to like spend time together before we shot, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
Or as much as possible. But like when you're making independent films, there's just not the luxury of, all the rehearsal time in the world.
Right.
I'm just being honest, and it like threw me off in a way because like USC is so supportive and like giving you spaces to like you can reserve a time to rehearse with your actors and things like that. Not the case, but there was time also for them to spend together on set, and Alexis, you talk about working with a new actor. I had my concerns about, not for her, because you could see her light, in the room, like you could see her light and her but I was so used to, I have a theater background. My undergrad is in theater, and so I was so used to working with, I like to cast a lot of theater actors and actors, who have this wealth of experience, because like I feel like that they speak my language in a way, but with Alexis, I was just like, oh my goodness, like, do I have the ability, like, to like bring this performance out? Like with her being a newer actor, will I be able to speak the language? And it was silly in a way because she's so, I was able to communicate with her in a different way. Like we sat down before we shot and went through the script together, and I talked to her really about, I wasn't this explicit, I don't think, but I just let her know that this was gonna be like, it needs to feel like life, it needs to feel as authentic as possible. It needs to feel like we were, like walking and talking people in life. My sound team probably, was not happy because I'm the type of director that's gonna be like, we need to have conversations and you don't need to project. Like, I just want you to be talking to the other person and hearing what they have to say and responding and really taking it in. And she just, and I told her about that I was going to have more of a poetic tone in the film, and, the pacing should feel like real life too. Mm-hmm. And she just jumped in and, was all in. I don't know. I don't have enough good things to say about her because she's just so hardworking. And, I feel like the character Kai really is in the spirit of like who she is as a human being, because she's just really somebody you want to reach out to and protect in a way, she's great.
Can you talk a little bit more about Nicole on set and, working with her?
Yeah, she's a brilliant actor who, was cast because we really were looking for someone who could really bring nuance to this role. And Turquoise just has this like huge emotional journey in the film. Like, it's funny, when I first started writing the film, talk about, collaborations, like being supportive. I am being supportive of the art and shaping the art. Like, I had written this kind of this film that has so much more world in it, because like I wanted to show where I was from. And it was just like you see these little vignettes in between, like these Turquoise character moments. And then, as we refined the film, like we went through development programs like Austin Film Society, San Francisco Film, Sundance Institute. And as we went along, we would get notes and things like that. And, Neil went through the Sundance Creative Producing Lab in 2017. And so he was in tune to like, what the script needed as well. And we started refining and mining it so it was Turquoise's arc, you know? And so I knew that we needed an actor who could navigate that, you know, Turquoise's, you know, lost hopes and dreams that having, you know, been Miss Juneteenth and now she's somewhere else in life, and Turquoise's disappointments, and, you know, she's like working all the time and she has these hopes and dreams for her daughter to have a better life, you know. And Nicole Beharie is someone's who I've been familiar with, you know, in her body of work, and also someone I knew, you know, she's Juilliard trained and could, you know, navigate just like this emotional journey that Turquoise goes on in the script. And I got a chance to she read for this part, and it was her audition was like super strong,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And I was just you know, I was like, okay, you know, I was nervous about casting Turquoise, period, but I was like, yeah, I definitely feel like that this will be the right person for this role, you know. And I think also accent was a big thing for me,
Yeah,
because
that was great.
that was huge. He said he's like understatement of the year, because I'm just so big on authenticity. And so, you know, Nicole and I talked earlier about accents, and she's done several different accents, and I would send her like voice notes of me talking.
Wow.
But I'm also, you know, someone who's gone to school at, you know, like USC, and I've been out of and worked in California, and so I've been away from home for a long time. So I know y'all hear it, but my accent, you know, has kind of morphed and changed a little bit. So we sat her down with a family friend who's never really, you know, lived outside of Fort Worth, and she was able to master that accent. So I'm really happy about that.
Yeah, Nicole nailed the accent.
Yeah, definitely.
Wow, that's awesome. Neil, I have a question for you.
Yeah, of course.
You know, this film felt so aesthetically unique, you know, from the locations to the background actors, you know, the props. It felt very detailed and thought out. You know, as producer, what was the process for like scouting locations and like creating this world?
You know, a lot of that has to go back to Channing and our hometown. You know, every place you saw was kind of a real place. The juke joint place is like a real live juke joint that's open 7 days a week and kind of doesn't close. It closes when it wants to. And we had community support, and that was a big thing that, you know, in the years that we were there trying to get the movie going, we really built relationships with folks and let them know we're shooting a movie like initially this summer, and then well next summer, and then, you know, but they had our back and were willing to open up their businesses and their homes so that we could shoot there. And it really added to kind of the authenticity of the place. You know, then on top of that, we had great collaborators with our production designer, Olivia Peoples. We had costume designer Rachel Best. We just kind of had like a great group. Daniel Patterson, who was our DP. Like they all just kind of really committed to Channing's like you know, vision. And I think when you have a community that's supportive and really like guiding, I'm not saying guiding, but like in some ways like guiding you through like, here's what we do and this is why we do it. It really helps the other collaborators understand, okay, well, this is a source of inspiration and now I can use that to, you know, get everything going. And I think that was really big. Something else Channing hasn't said yet, and then
I was gonna say something you hadn't said.
Okay, well, I'll say what you haven't said yet. So what Channing hasn't said yet is that, you know, when I'm not from Fort Worth, I'm not from Texas, so I kind of brought in outsider's eye. And one of the things I really liked about where we were shooting is it felt like everybody there kind of held on to things past their expiration date. Like, you know, you see it in the movie, Turquoise's truck, like, you know, 10 is always breaking down, but there's something about caring for the things you have that feels like, you know, a core principle of like the community, and we wanted that to be in the film. Channing wanted that to be in the film. So when she was talking to her different collaborators, it was like, treat everything as if it's past its expiration date and we're still holding on to it. And I think that kind of created this aesthetic, even an aesthetic guide that you know, kind of permeated every, you know, more moment and morsel of the film.
Yeah, I mean, I felt super supportive because, you know, Neil and I had collaborated for so long, and so he just knew like me as an artist and was supportive in that way. The other thing I think you're not saying, is that, you know, we were shooting this film in a non-traditional way. You know, we were engaging the community, and there's so much that we were so reliant on having the community involved for the sense of authenticity in the film. And so, I mean, Neil would literally be calling everybody in the neighborhood, like, you gotta be here at this time. The horse has got to be here at this time. Like, it wasn't just a regular like producing job, like where he's like casting actors and they get a call time,
right?
And you know, he's just making sure, you know, dotting the I's and crossing the T's. You know, he had to like literally like engage an entire community that he was foreign to in a way. You know, now you're a member of the community,
Right.
but then you were just like, oh, Channing brought him around.
Right,
okay.
right. But yeah.
But
yeah.
you know, it was tough. I could have only imagined it was tough for you. And you know, I'm in it with the actors, so I can't, you know, usually I could just kind of pick up the phone and be a bridge, but no, he took it on himself. So, you know, kudos to him for the authenticity in the film.
Well, you know, and the thing is, it goes back to like our producing team and our partners there, really kind of creating an environment where we could, like, I could really focus on trying to wrangle some of the community stuff, because I had like other producers who were really strong who could help make sure like the film stuff was happening, and all the important, like, you know, paperwork and everything that needs to happen is also happening. So I was very fortunate in that I got to really lean more into some of the creative producing aspects, where it was like, you know, making sure that the bar we could get into. And like, that was an interesting thing, because frankly, logistically, like a lot of these locations kind of aren't supposed to work on paper, because like the bar doesn't close. So, you know, how do you get into a business that doesn't close? Well, they gave us a few days, and we had some people sitting outside because no one knew the bar was closed, even though we put signs up and put signs everywhere a week or two before. Like, people kept trying to come into the bar while we were filming. So it was like, and it's fun, you know, but it was like,
it's their home away from home.
It's their home away from home. And it's kind of crazy, but really endearing and great. And I mean, I'm really fortunate to have been able to be there, because I felt like it was a gift to be able to have access, the kind of access we had in that community. It was truly a gift. And I, you know, you want to be respectful of that.
Right.
And that, you know, it's so cool. It's really cool, but it was just a different type of, it's not like a thing where you're like, okay, cool, we're going to this location and it's a closed set and no one's going to be there after these times. It's like, you know, prepare everybody for this living, breathing thing.
You know, and I remember too, we also, I should say this, you know, in making this film in a non-traditional way, like we were always telling our crew, like, no matter what, like these are folks that I grew up with, you know, who I made the film for and about, you know, so we always have to be respectful in these spaces. Like we were going into an actual funeral home, you know, you know, reverence and respect in the spaces, you know, the bar to them, like that's their home. Like,
I have a funeral home story.
Okay,
not a crazy one, just a funny.
I don't think Luke asked us that.
Okay, well, I'll leave it alone. But I mean, all I'll say is just, you know, like in this case, it was a real life funeral home. So it was like we had a date set, but then obviously it's a funeral home. So if something happens and someone needs to be, you know, buried, like your date may move. And I mean, you know, those kind of things. It was good. But and you know, we were able to work around it. But it's those kind of things are just like normally you hopefully would not deal with, but it was important that we needed like that location and had that texture and had everything we needed. So, you know, it's those kind of things that made it very interesting.
Well, that actually kind of leads into my next question. You know, with this being, you know, you're saying it's kind of like a non-traditional shooting sense. Can you talk about like scheduling this film and like, you know, some of like the difficulties of like shooting on those locations? And also I'd love to hear about the shooting day of the parade scene.
Okay, I'll talk about that. That was the first day of shooting.
Oh my God.
Yeah, seriously. So
way to get going.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Channing, you can mention it, but
I mean, we shot it Verite style.
For sure.
Yeah. And it was actually a July 4th parade.
Right.
That we repurposed for Juneteenth. So there's your inside information.
Yeah, and that was crazy because like it was technically, officially it wasn't the first day of shooting. It's like, it's called like a pre-day kind of, like you kind of get your feet wet in making, you know, the movie, and first time the crew and everybody's working together. But we had this date, we had this parade that was going to be really big, and we spent like a month just talking to the programmers and making sure that we could get a little section where we made it look like Juneteenth. And we mapped out their whole route, and we, you know, talked about camera angles and where the cameras are going to be and the performances, and we had one take to get everything. And it was just
Neil,
crazy.
So Neil, I directed, you know, Nicole and the other actors, and Neil directed all the second unit stuff. So, you know, in addition
and James directed some second unit.
Yeah, James did it as well. So it was an interesting day, especially day one. But when we saw, you know, the footage, it was like, you know, it was like, yes, we're doing the right thing. Because like you see all those parade floats and all those beautiful Black people coming over that hill.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, we're making a movie.
But it was really cool because it was just a lot of coordination and walkies and cell phones. Okay, we're coming around the corner. We're on this side of the parade.
And we weren't able to like rent golf carts.
Yeah, we were able to rent one golf cart, but apparently like everybody rents golf carts on July 4th.
For this parade.
For this parade and like for other events. So like there were no golf carts within like a 30 or 40 mile radius. So we're like calling family and friends, like, do you have a golf cart? It's like that we could, yeah. So it was crazy.
True independence.
Right.
And you know what I really love about this film, you know, there was like little moments where we learned the history and what Juneteenth is. And you know, you even had activist Opal Lee in the film.
Yeah.
So can you just talk about, you know, what role movies play in education and how your film incorporated that into the film?
I mean, I think like, you know, I was talking earlier how, you know, Neil and I connected at film school, you know, over like these shared interests. And like one of the things that we connected over was that we wanted to make, you know, these kind of films that highlighted potentially some historical moments that aren't often, you know, seen or often known about. And so I think that there's a way, you know, this is obviously a contemporary film, you know, that has Juneteenth in the backdrop, but there, you know, you do get some education of what Juneteenth is if you haven't, you know, if you don't know anything about it. Like there's an explanation in the film, but it's done in the spirit of telling the story. So I think there's a way that you can educate and, you know, be connecting with people with, you know, through the characters and telling the story at the same time. But that's something that we've always wanted to do, you know, especially tell stories, you know, educate about, you know, history in the African American communities that's not well known, or even if it's known, you've shown a different perspective.
Yeah, what I thought was really great and sincere about the community we were making this movie in and the story is that it's naturally just a part of the Juneteenth traditions as they're celebrated in Fort Worth to kind of have this educational, you know, and it's not meant to beat you over the head. It's just like, hey, just so you know, this is the reason for this season, you know, and we wanted to keep that, I think, in the film, and it's in Channing's script as she wrote it. So it was just kind of a natural, you know, natural aspect of the movie.
And, you know, the opening was really powerful. I love how you started with the song Lift Every Voice and Sing. And, you know, Turquoise putting on the tiara and holding her dress. And then the very next scene, she's cleaning a toilet. Can you just talk a little bit about like the intent and the meaning of opening the film that way?
I mean, part of it was goes back to that whole, you know, issue of authenticity, you know, and I really was examining the way in which we commemorate Juneteenth, and it always starts with Juneteenth, you know, itself, the day, like after the parade has happened and everyone gathers together, there are like performances and things like that. And you know, someone is going to stop and make sure that Lift Every Voice and Sing is sung first, you know, because for us, anybody who's not familiar, you know, that is the Black national anthem. And for us, you know, it's the way that, you know, when I talk about Juneteenth and commemorating, like it's our sense of like reverence and respect, you know, it's a moment of reflection for our ancestors. And it also in the lyrics talks about the past and the future, and that's something that Turquoise is navigating in the space of the film. So I thought it was important for character, but also to maintain, or contribute to the authenticity of the film, to start there, so that we know what we're in for.
Right, for sure.
And I will also just love to hear, what was like some happy accidents that happened on set, or any favorite shooting days that happened.
The parade is probably full of happy accidents.
Yeah.
But we knew the parade so intimately because we've been going there for years, to scout it out.
Mm-hmm.
We were going to Juneteenth parade, and we were also going to the July 4th parade. And just to kind of, I don't think I said this, but the July 4th parade is held in this historically Black community in Fort Worth called Como. And people come from all over to go to it. And so, there's some wonderful things. Like, I look at the film now and I'm like the guy that's walking across the street with the snake.
Yeah. He's
like, that's
year.
not anything that you can, on our budget, we wouldn't have been able.
Not at all.
And so there are little things, little details like that I just love. There's also like in the scenes at Wayman's, like at the bar, like we were at the mercy of like getting the word out, and Neil would recruit people to show up, so like our crowds, like it, and luckily like we wrote around, what was there, the folks that come to that bar. So like we couldn't lose by having the people show up, but just like even like the night scene where Turquoise, I don't want to reveal the film, but like the night scene in the bar, you have all this energy just from the people that, were there, and you had to recruit the people, bless you. But that was magical for me. That was another thing that, we just went in, and I had a shooting plan for it. But, in a sense, you're capturing life.
Yeah.
And so I would be right there with my DP, Daniel Patterson. And sometimes it would be like, okay, Daniel, let's turn the camera,
What was really cool, there's like a scene, and you guys can see it, where guys like putting salt in a beer or something. And like people were just like hanging out. And so they just would do things that were consistent with just hanging out in that space, because they hang out in that space anyway. And it'd be like, oh yeah, like, let's get this, get that, and let's get, and that was kind of the atmosphere of like, everybody just get together and act like you normally would for the next X amount of hours while we shoot this scene. And like, and it was cool.
But we still there were moments where we have to cut the music off.
Oh yeah, the music
was always explaining those things, but we started with the music so everybody would get the energy,
Right.
Everyone was really in it.
Right. And then I think other magic moments, I think as a director, what I've learned about myself is I love for actors to be able to like sit in quiet moments. So, often the scene will take place, and then I'm going to let it linger before I call cut, because I'll be able to grab some of those little human moments. And so there was often stuff like that happening, and, or I would get in a scene and I'd have an idea about the blocking. And then instinctually something would shift in me, and I would be like, this doesn't feel right. And, in my background as an actor, like I'm immersive. So I'll walk through the blocking myself, or I'll grab Neil and say, let's walk through this, And sometimes the blocking would change, or, I'd feel the shift. And so that would always be a magic moment for me, and we'd find a way to, I think with the DP, Daniel, who's lovely, to choreograph it around the new blocking in the moment, even though it'd been this shot listed, well thought out kind of plan, sometimes those things change.
Wow, that's awesome. Hey, Alex, we have, I'm going to ask 2 more small questions, and then I'll open up to audience.
Sounds good to me.
So what's the biggest lesson you learned from working on this film? And do you have any tips for SCA students and young filmmakers?
You want to go first? You want me to go first?
the biggest thing we learned,
You got to think about
yeah,
it.
let me think about it.
I think my biggest thing was, he's laughing at me. I think my biggest thing was that, so basically when you, and this will be a tip too, basically when you start conceiving of a story, for me, there was something that, like in thinking about Miss Juneteenth, when I started thinking about, okay, what happens to these women that go out into the world, you know, and I started getting excited, you know, I started feeling like my heart beat fast a little bit, you know, and I felt like this little like flutter of passion about, you know, what the potential could be. Um, I think, you know, fast forward to making the movie and like all these things kind of bear down when you're making a movie, like we've talked about them, you know, location, scheduling, you know, um, you could, you know, something could happen with like, you know, the extra showing up, things like that, like all of these things that could happen on an independent film. But like what kept me going and what I think influenced like the decisions of like what we have to get, you know, was that little early kernel, you know, that little fluttering that I felt that was like, okay, this is what I'm, you know, this is the part of the story that I was passionate about. And so this is the part of the story that I have to get no matter what, you know, like I wanted to see, this has to be, you know, about Turquoise's journey and, you know, this dream deferred moving to, you know, this idea of a new dream. So I have to get this scene to support that. And Neil was so great in that he's so great at like being able to look at a script and pull the themes of the script out. Like he can just rip it apart and pull the themes out. And so he was constantly reminding me like what the themes of the film were, because I was like so in it. You know, I'm not even thinking from the outside, I'm thinking from the inside. Like I'm walking through Turquoise's journey as I'm making the film, you know, like that was informing the blocking, the production design, the costumes, the everything. Like, you know, I'm walking through the film from the inside out, and I had a supportive partner to say, this is where we're going, you know, when your head is in it. So, you know, I think it's remember the reason that you wrote the script. I think follow your instincts, because there were plenty of times where things would change and I or people would ask me, like somebody's going to ask you about everything. The costume designer is going to come up and say, you know, what color t-shirt is Turquoise wearing today? You know, and I'm like, I'm not, you know, that's the last thing I'm thinking about. I'm like, you know, I've got a shot. I've got to make sure that like, I've got my shot list in front of me. I've got this and I've got that, you know, there's just all of these things that you're thinking about, and you have to communicate with a million people at once. But you have to remember, you know, you have to like act on instinct. And like, I think about someone pointed out, I think in an article about the film, you know, how Turquoise is old. You see Turquoise's old yellow dress in the first scene, and then, you know, you see her in the flashback, and she's this young, hopeful woman. And then you cut to her in the bathroom scrubbing the toilet, but she has this yellow scarf on. So you're connecting the dots, and you know, that stuff. That's probably from Bruce Block too. Yeah. Though. So maybe it's not all instinct. Pay attention in your classes too.
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing I learned is just, it's challenging because trying to figure out how to creatively support the project was really something. It's a big question I'm still kind of exploring, right? And it's like, how, when you are producing, how do you juggle, you know, the reality of here's the finite resources we have, but then how do you also create the environment where there's room to play and the collaborators feel they're supported and the director feels they're supported. And, you know, I mean, for me, what I had to learn personally is like not to get too locked down into just one way of solving a problem or approaching a scene, because you may get everything together and then it all changes, right? Which is what we know, but I think it's, you know, for me personally, it's like, I think I can get into like, well, this is what we agreed to and this is what we're going to do. And, you know, trying to manage that and do it in support of what, you know, Channing's vision is. And I think, you know, a lot of that, I spent a lot of time with my producing partners and with Channing, with the collaborators, trying to just make sure I understood what her vision was. Because once we got to what her idea was for a scene or what the core of the movie was about, it really influenced, you know, everything. And Channing did a great job of kind of putting us in that environment, like by having us go to parties and everything else, to see like, oh, this is what the world is, and we could really expand on that from our discipline.
Yeah, there was lots of research. Like even when I felt like our production designer was terrific.
Right.
I'm Olivia Peoples, but I was trying to. It was important for me to have Turquoise's house look like a house that would look like that was on the south side of Fort Worth. So even when I felt like I needed to show what that looked like, I took them to a house on the south side. Like we all went together to a family friend as a crew, and looked at it. Even the cinematographer I think was there so that he could see, that I wanted it to feel like a compressed space.
Right.
So I think as much research as you can do ahead of time, and as much as you can, communicate your vision, I think helps a lot because you're shooting fast. I wish I had them around somewhere. I don't know what I just did with them, but I've got like all these binders of like visual aids, like for folks. Oh, he's digging them out. Like show and tell, but it's just like it's a book full of like visual inspirations, and it's just me. I know you can't see some of them, but it's just me like pulling like things, photos and visual aids that I love, and it communicates to all the creatives like this is like the tone of the film. We may not do anything like exactly like this, but I'm pulling from like different photos of real folks, movies, different photo series. This is from Gordon Park's segregation series, and then this was like a picture that I was like, I want Turquoise to feel like this. I even sent visuals I think to Nicole as well.
Yeah.
So this is all the stuff, everybody has like their different way that they do things, but this is part of mine.
Yeah, Gordon Park's segregation series was a huge
inspiration
and reference point for the film, because I mean, if you look at those pictures, they're they're shot on film, but there's like a grain and a texture and a grit that really kind of echoed that earlier point that Channing was making about like things feeling past their expiration date and wanting to show what that looked like in 2019 when you're in a community that is like really on the edge of being gentrified to a certain extent, but also holding on to what's important to that community. So it's all those things.
First of all, thank you so much for showing that lookbook. That was awesome.
Awesome.
So I guess we can open up to audience now, Alex.
Okay, so I want to start with a very special guest that I know will make you smile.
Uh-oh.
If you're camera ready, Cookie Clayton, over to the panelists. And just remember, Cookie, to turn on your mic and your video. You don't have to turn on your video, but I'm sure everyone wants you to.
Where is she?
Yeah, we want to see her.
You should be coming in just a sec.
Oh my goodness, this is so great.
I'm here somewhere. Where am I?
There's the cinema.
Amazing.
Hi, friends.
What a gift.
Definitely.
What a gift. Oh, we're so excited to see you.
Well, my husband and I made it a point to go on Friday, on Juneteenth, to see the film. And we totally enjoyed it. Everything that Luke said about how authentic it was, how honest it felt, it made me feel like I was in Dallas or Texarkana, Texas, all the scenery and the juke joint, because my husband, he was like, I said, when I was looking, I said, that's a juke joint, Mike. So, they, I guess he kind of understood that, but I think it was an awesome film. I really enjoyed it. I'm like Luke, the beginning of it, I was like, oh yeah, they went from here to here. That was very interesting. I like that. But it was really good. And I think that movies and films have a sense of truth when it's written by what you know. It resonates on film, and it resonates with the people that are watching. But kudos to both of you, Cinebabies. I miss you guys so much. And
we miss you.
You guys are so busy. I can't even get in touch with y'all on Facebook, but I understand that you guys are busy. And one of the questions I have, and it's not really about Juneteenth, but are there any plans to extend Red into a full-length feature?
See, this is what happens when you have people that become family. From USC, that's my thesis film. And my stepmom was repping for me. She's like, "Are you going to expand?"
Right.
We were trying to survive Miss Juneteenth.
Yeah, because that was a quite a special film. We came to the African American Film Festival to see that, and we loved it. And my husband told me to tell Channing, he said he would pay for you to fly me anywhere you want me to come to be in your film. He told me to tell you that.
Tell him deal.
I will do that. But yes, congratulations. The movie theater was packed.
Wow.
I mean, it was a drive-in, but there were a lot of cars there and people were really into it, and good job.
Thank you.
And how special this was. Oh, thank you, Cinnamon. We love you.
I love you guys.
Alex, thank you for the treat.
Thank you, Alex.
It was a pleasure for me. Okay, Cookie, I'm going to send you back to the attendees.
Thank you, doll. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Okay, let's bring in Vanessa Heron. And Vanessa is one of our current students.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, Vanessa.
Oh, great. Hi. I was raised in Fort Worth.
Whoa.
So it was so funny when you drove down Rosedale and I could see my dad's church, Antioch Missionary Baptist Church. It's his church.
Wow.
So it was really exciting to see that. It really made my evening. So thank you for that. I got to call him and tell him.
Absolutely.
But I have a couple questions. One is, what was the permit process like? I've often thought about shooting back in my hometown. What was it like to go there as a production? And secondly, like, if you can tell us, like, what kind of budget did you work with to do that?
Well, so Channing had made her thesis film here. So she was, Red was shot. She was at USC, but she came down to Fort Worth and shot her thesis film on Super 16, many moons ago. So whatever the process was for the USC films and permits were kind of what that was for that film. For this movie, they have a wonderful film commission, Fort Worth Film Commission, that just is very hungry to bring projects to Fort Worth. They made Miss Juneteenth, and then, months later they made another film, Wilson, I forget the name, but 12 Mighty Orphans.
Right.
Which should be coming out, I'm sure, sometime this year. So they're very much trying to, establish like Fort Worth is a unique place, different from Dallas. Come to Fort Worth. So you're gonna find a lot of support there. Permits and everything else, like, I don't remember there being much of a headache, except for like the parade stuff. We have to get that taken care of because we involved city, and you have to make sure that streets are closed. And we, the opening shot with Turquoise waving involved getting permits because we had to close down a separate street. So those things, but for the most part, it's very much just kind of come here and you're going to be supported. Budget stuff I can't talk about, and yeah, I don't know what else. Then crew. There's good crew here. Dallas. We have a lot of people who work in Dallas as well who worked on the film, and so you have a lot of commercial projects happening in Dallas. So there's a good crew, and the Texas Film Commission is also extremely supportive. And there's a spirit of wanting to help make films here. So I think that's what's really special. Mm-hmm. People aren't like trying to figure out the angle of how to take advantage of a production as much as like how to help.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you guys, and congratulations.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you. I hope to see your Fort Worth story soon.
Definitely.
I hope so too.
All right, let's bring over a fellow cohort alumni, Jin Yu Kim.
Hey, Jen.
Where is she?
All right, so Jin, I'm gonna unmute you, and you can choose to turn on your video or not.
Hello, guys.
Hey, David.
Hey, Jen is attending to our child. So
Good, man. Thanks for
Yeah, I
coming
hear
in.
that. I understand that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that our video is even muted. I don't even know how to turn it on. So maybe you should go to the next person. But
Oh, okay.
Perfect. Thank you all.
Congrats. We
For now,
support
and
you.
you can chime back in when you're ready.
Yeah.
All right,
Thanks, David.
let's go over to
Thanks, Jen.
Amy Reed. Amy, I will move you over now.
Hey guys.
Hey, how are you doing?
Amy.
Definitely.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. I'm so happy to see you.
Well, good to see you guys. J.R. Hardman, she was saying that she really enjoyed the screening at Sundance.
Amazing.
My question for you, so you had your visual reference, Randy. Tom, he will say that, you know, great to bring on the sound designer as soon as you can at the script writing process. Not always the case with low budget films. So at what point did you have your sound designer on board?
I mean, okay, so this was interesting because I had my sound designers on board since my thesis film. I've worked with the same sound designer since then. And sadly, like for when it came to Miss Juneteenth, I literally just worked on a short with them in January that you produced. And sadly for Miss Juneteenth, because they vacillate between, you know, smaller projects and then these huge, gigantic projects. And they got onto another huge, gigantic project and couldn't do Miss Juneteenth for the festival. And I was like devastated because they just, they're game changers for me. You know, they're longtime collaborators and they know my work, and they are, you know, they're not just sound designers to me, they're artists. And so we collaborated with another sound designer to, you know, design the film for Sundance. And but I always knew it was always in the spirit of, you know, when they became available, you know, they would come and contribute to the film. And so that's what happened. After Sundance, they came back onto the film and designed the film for distribution. And so, yes, was because the question is, I just want to make sure I have the right question for Mary. You know, were there any sounds specific to the world? Like there's so many sounds that are just like, there's just, you know, there's the life in the bar that's so dependent on sound. And, you know, there's the world in particular, you know, there's just like, this is just such a sound heavy film, just like the church. And there's even discussion, how does the funeral home sound? Now, come on, you know, like all of these things, you know, Amy. So, I mean, they're my, like, I want to work, you know, with them for the rest of my life. But if they're not available, like sound designers are so important to me, you know, like as far as authenticity is concerned, it's so much about like, there's every component in the world. And I need to, especially, you know, as someone who's so big on dialogue and the authenticity of the dialogue and, you know, the way the world sounds. Like I literally write, you know, like I hear people talk, you know, and it's the same way, like I want the sound to reflect the world that we're living in. Like that makes it feel so much more lived in. So yes, it's so important. And that's a great tip. And I'm glad that Amy's bringing this up. Like in film school, we're all just trying to get it done. And, you know, sound gets pushed to the back end. Like, please, like, you know, if you make relationships, make them with, you know, sound designers, because they're just so necessary and important.
Okay, should we go back to Jen?
Jen, hi. Are you still with your child?
Maybe not. We'll just wait for Jen to pop on the video.
Well, can I make a shout out real quick while we're waiting? I want to say shout out to two Trojans who worked on the film. Emily Rice, who was the composer,
yes,
did all the music that you heard. And then Satomi McMartin, who was our AD on the film, who also was helping obviously with scheduling and everything else. So I wanted to shout out those two Trojans who helped make Miss Juneteenth.
And got it done. Yes. Yes.
All right, let's go and bring over Sade Famuyiwa. Moving you over now.
Not reveal. Oh yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
I really enjoyed your film a lot. Like, I really like the aesthetic of it and different things like that. But I just wanted to ask, like, what was the reason why the Turquoise's background wasn't really explicitly like given? Because I felt like it was told in a very subtle way, and it was kind of like something that you picked up on like as you watched the film.
Yeah, I mean, the film really is about Turquoise coming to terms with this dream that she had and this idea of who she was, you know, and, you know, having been so wrapped up in it, you know, and I wanted us to, you know, go on that same journey with her in the sense that, like, I didn't want us to get bogged down in just what her backstory was, and to look at the film for where she is now and like where she needed to go. And so, you know, it gets revealed in these like subtle ways, you know, just by this cast of characters that are around her. But it was important for me that we really are looking at this woman, you know, having this, you know, dream that in a way, you know, she's mourning the dream, but, you know, that we give her the space in the film to, you know, be able to let that go and move forward so that she's an example for her daughter, you know, and is able to let her daughter be her own self.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because there were never any moments, or even in early drafts, where it was like, here's Turquoise's whole story. It just kind of, the movie kind of just started, and it just, I think that's true to this place too, with Fort Worth.
Yeah.
And my experience in the, like, being in the city, like, you have some characters with such rich and deep histories, but like, you may not know it until, you know, you've been hanging out with them for 3 years and they know how to fix a car really well, and you find out that they have this whole other life, and, you know, they're like, no big deal about it. So I think that when I watched this movie, Miss Juneteenth, like when I really watched it, I think Channing nailed her hometown, nailed her, like the community, that even the pacing of the film feels consistent with like what it is to be here, the way people communicate. So I really feel like you've like used the tools of filmmaking to kind of reflect where you're from. It was pretty special. So
yeah, I think it's like, you know, there's some moments in the film that you all have seen, but I won't say here because some people haven't seen it, that is like, oh wow, you know, Turquoise, that's what Turquoise went through, you know. And I think it's important to like let those moments unfold. I think you're also getting to know who she is as a character. And you know, I just didn't want judgment, want anything. I didn't want to have any judgment as a writer. You know, I wanted to just, it's like Neil is saying, there's some things that just, you know, you learn about people, and I wanted it to unfold that way. Like as a human being, I'm someone who, I had to try to work on this, but I just call people and start talking when they pick up the phone and don't say
yes. Yes.
And that's literally the way I start my movies.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's bring on Rayshawn Morris. Moving you over now, Rayshawn.
Hello.
Hi.
It's good to see y'all. Yes. So I am a fan of Nicole Beharie. I've been a fan since American Violet.
Yeah.
I was curious about seeing that character was a character from Texas, a single mother struggling with finances and also going through some crazy stuff. I was curious if you even had these conversations about how to separate those two characters, because they are vastly different. I was just curious if that was something that she was concerned about, if that was something you were concerned about, just kind of what that process was like to kind of make those nuances show.
No, we never discussed that, because I think that, there was so much of the detail of who Turquoise, was as a character was on the page. Like as a writer, I'm super detailed, like to the point where I have a really good director friend that was like, okay, next go write a novel, because my description will be like so long and so specific, So, and Nicole as an actor is someone who, does lots of her own, she'll do her notes and things like that, and break down the character for herself as well. And so, there was never really any discussion to differentiate because, like, we were approaching this specific story, for its own specificity, own sense of place. You know, I laugh about this a lot because like Kendrick is from Houston, but the accent is so different from Fort Worth. So when he came here, he really was listening to the locals. Like I may have mentioned this already, but he was listening to the locals, just how things were different, and was able to like pick up those differences really quickly. So I think it's like the same thing here. I mean, the commonalities are probably, there's a Black woman that's on a journey, and it takes place in Texas, but it's just so different.
Mm-hmm.
The specificity of it is different, but I don't think I ever even thought about it.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for asking the question.
Okay, let's bring on Disa Philadelphia. Move you over, Disa.
Hi.
Hi.
Sorry, I'm the writer for the school, and usually I wouldn't ask a question in a forum like this because I like to leave the time to the students, but I love this film so much. I can't tell you how many people I forced to watch it this weekend here in the US and in Canada, and who then sent me thank yous. Awesome. Publicly on Facebook. I'm a movie snob and I love small existentialist films, and I'm not exaggerating when I say this is one of my favorite films now. Like top 3. So just had to say that. But I just thought the casting was so brilliant with Nicole Beharie, and then Kendrick Sampson just seems to be having a moment right now. And Nicole, with the stuff that she went through with Sleepy Hollow, seems so relevant in terms of the conversation about diversity right now. And I've seen some of that in the interviews, and and I feel like her interviews have been a great compliment to your interviews, Channing. So I'm just wondering, and I feel like she's going to be nominated for this. I really feel like that's good. And I mean, I used to be a movie correspondent, and I've just been hearing chatter from my friends who still do that about how great they think she is. So my question is, how extensive was the casting process to find these actors? And do you feel like you kind of hit the jackpot with them, with Kendrick getting so much attention this season for Insecure, and Nicole being able to be so relevant to the conversation in the zeitgeist right now?
You know what? I don't think I even thought that far into it. Like, I was really lucky that I had producers who were supportive in me finding the best actors to play the roles. And to be honest, the film, we were fortunate in that it was greenlit without a cast. And it was greenlit on the strength of the script. Mm-hmm. And, the financiers were even supportive in me, finding, trusted me to find who I felt was the best cast for the role. Like, they never said to me, you have to, cast specific people, so I literally, and I feel lucky in that way because, my mandate was, I had to, I knew I was doing this, this really human story with this like poetic tone about Black life, and so I knew that my mandate was like, I've got to find actors with nuance. Like, so we scored, like that was Neil and I's whole thing. It was like, we need nuance, we need nuance, and so we were constantly looking for that. And like I think I mentioned earlier, I definitely saw when I, I lit up when I saw Nicole's Reed, and the same with Kendrick, and then, it became a matter of with independent films, how it often comes together, it's like always a matter of like people's schedules and stuff like that. And so everything is just kind of like this magical thing that came together. But, I definitely I couldn't speak to like what I anticipated, because I was just so in it. I was just like, I just want to represent these characters because we had been with them so long. And to Neil's credit, like, I was so specific with Turquoise. There's so much of like me and Turquoise and my mom and my grandmother, my aunts, the people in the women in the community who like lifted me up, that I knew her through and through. But like, for the Ronnie character who's played by Kendrick Sampson, Kendrick brought so much nuance to that role, but like Neil was there as, having lived as a Black man in the South, informing that character for me as well, like we need more. Oh, I'm telling on you. Okay. I don't mean in action. I mean, but no, he was there saying, we need more nuance on the page here. Like we need to see, his perspective here. So, that's what I mean by like having great collaborators around you. It makes you stronger, I think.
Okay, so Jin is back in the game.
Oh, Jin.
Okay, I don't know why. Hold on, I gotta. My video's not working, so I'll just ask my question. First of all, congratulations.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you. So we really want to see you.
Yeah, we want to see you really badly.
I know. I tried to sign in on Dave's computer, but I don't know what's going on.
Okay.
But I wanted to know, as a filmmaker, what do you tell yourself to keep going, seeing how long it took and just the feat that you pulled off?
She stumped us. I mean, there were so many things that you tell yourself to keep going.
The lies.
No. I mean, I think there was so many things that happened along the way, but we would, there was always some little thing that would happen to tell us to keep going.
Yeah,
it wasn't
true.
just us,
Right.
Like when you had the idea about like submitting to the development programs, and then we would, get into a program or something like that, or a little grant would come through, or,
right.
Something that would say, we get support. We might not, we get in a competition, we might not place first, or maybe we got third, or maybe we got a little bit of software, or whatever it was. We felt like those were little hints, along the way. And we certainly couldn't have anticipated like all these wonderful things that have happened for the film. But, I'm definitely glad we kept going. I think for me, the defining moment of keep going was when I had my daughter. Because we've been going for a long time, but I was like, I got really determined after that, because I was just like, oh, I've got to do this film, because like, for me, Miss Juneteenth was formative in that, I had something to look to growing up, and when I could see women that looked like me, and so I wanted to have something that she could look to, like when she got older, so she could see, folks that look like her on screen. So that,
the one thing I thought was crazy oh my bad, what did you say, Jen?
I said, yeah, and also her mom doing it, like doing the film, like making it for her to see as well.
Right.
Definitely.
She definitely saw that. She was on set.
Zora was there every day. The thing I thought that I know there's like a shift for me personally when we were making the movie, because at one point I was really like more result oriented, like, this is not successful unless we're getting this recognition or this specific thing or this kind of like we have to get place this we have to have these results to kind of like tell us that we're going in the right direction. And like early on, before we got our first grant and before we had our producing partners and before all that other stuff, like whatever I thought we needed, we just weren't getting. And it got to a point where I was just like, well, I have to make a decision, like if I'm going to commit to the process of making the movie and just let the things come as they're supposed to come, or if I'm going to like decide that this is like, I have to hit this list to make the movie. And I think like, I kind of just tried to enjoy the process and just be open to learn. And like after that, like, you know, a few months later, slowly you start meeting people and things started clicking that hadn't clicked before. And I'd real, you know, it just, that was a big thing that helped me move from like, I have to have a certain result to like, if I just can go with the flow, go with the process, you know, maybe something can happen I couldn't have imagined, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jen.
Thank you, Jen. We miss you.
We do.
I miss you too.
Okay, so we have, let's take two more. And I just want to quickly say that she doesn't want me to call on her, but Kathy Shirley says, congratulations. And we're
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you.
And thank you for your text messages. I'm gonna, I'll just text you later too.
All right, so let's bring over Patricia Barrett.
First of all, I just want to say thank you so much for your concepts and how you're moving forward with Black history and teaching us Black history, because myself lately I've been reading a lot of books on Black history because I'm finding out how little that I don't know. And I think with your vision, and I am hoping that you're continuing doing this, will you continue to do this in the future? And what is your next project coming up? And I thank you very much for what you're doing. And I can't wait to see your movie.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for, you know, watching it. I hope that you enjoy it too.
Oh, I'm sure I will. It's the first time I've ever heard about Juneteenth as well. So I'm excited for you. And I think you have a great vision for the future. But go ahead.
Thank you so much. We definitely are, you know, going to continue to do that. And, you know, our next project is Neil's project, actually, that he's written and he's going to direct. And, you know, it deals with and we can't talk much about it now because, you know, we're getting it out into the world, but it deals with a little known piece of African-American history in the South. I could at least say that.
It's like folklore.
Yeah.
Folklore.
Yeah. And so we're going to continue to do that. I think it's just part of like who we are as artists, you know, and also it's just, we've grown up hearing these stories and been, you know, such a big part of our lives that, you know, we want to tell stories that represent like who we are as people and you know, our communities. So, and contemporary stories, and just, you know, I think it's also about legacy and, you know, how history affects who you are today. So thank you so much. We'll continue to push forward on them as long as they give us movies to make. We'll do it.
And thank you. I think you're here at the right time, at the right place. And this is your time, so thank you.
Thank you for watching. Thank you. And I'm excited for you to see the film.
I am too.
All right, so let's welcome over Maria Doctor.
Oh, Maria.
Give me 1 second here.
You see, Neil's always working.
Hi, Channing.
Hi, Maria. Oh, hi. It's so good to see your face.
So good to see you. I have to give a shout out to you, just like as a person. I was one of those undergrads while Channing was working at the student production office, who she supported and nurtured. So you'll always be like, you know, kind of a pseudo distant mentor to me. And I don't know. Anyways, your filmmaking career as well is super inspiring. And my question was, having seen the movie last night and being very excited about it, I'm not sure if it's a question you want to answer, but there's a character in the movie that was super charming and amiable and sort of like a standout guy. Mm-hmm. I don't want to say the name because you're trying to not spoil it for the viewers.
No, you can say the name. That I don't think the names.
Bacon?
Oh yeah.
So there's the tension between, you know, these two guys, and just the general question is, I guess it's two-part. How do you, as a writer, what was the writing process like? Being tempted to have Turquoise's story sort of resolve by getting together with either one of those characters? I'm just curious about the writing journey, how you got to that point, or if you knew from the beginning that, again, without spoiling what's going to happen at the end of the movie, which point you knew how you wanted to resolve the movie.
Yeah, I really knew that early on. I wanted to write this story about this woman who had had this dream deferred, you know, who was going on a journey who was going on this journey, but knew that she just wanted something for herself, even if she couldn't quite articulate what that was, or me at the moment couldn't articulate, you know, what that was. And so I always had that kernel of an idea. And then, you know, once I have that kernel, you know, then the characters, I start surrounding her with characters that support that kernel, you know, it starts getting flushed out and that kind of thing. But that I wanted to be able to say that early on, because I thought it was important to see Turquoise, you know, reconcile this idea of her dreams that kind of slipped through her hands, you know. So that's how that was born. And then there's also this idea of, like, you know, the hopes and dreams that she has for a child, you know, and kind of stuffing her own dreams away, you know, putting them away and still finding a way to still dream, you know, herself, and letting her child be herself. So I just had all these ideas, and then you just start, I mean, you know how it is, you start refining everything and seeing how characters, you know, the characters, you know, you may know, or, you know, the characters you may come up with and make them more colorful or whatever it is, you know, but then you find a way for those characters that have become really interesting, you know, hopefully they're interesting characters to support the journey of that lead character and what she needs to learn. So she starts, you know, as someone who's, you know, in that, I don't want to say how she ends, because I'm telling everybody.
It was very relatable. That's all I say. Extremely relatable and inspiring.
Okay, all right. When she's going on from point A to point B, you know, and you find ways to support that.
Cool. Congrats. Wonderful job.
Thank you. Thank you. It's so good to see you, Maria.
Thank you.
So I'm going to let Luke wrap this up for us, but I did want to just quickly say that if you haven't seen, there are comments that have come in the Q&A box that are just comments from friends and faculty, and I just wanted to make sure that you caught those.
Awesome.
Alex, I wanted to say too that if there are any students out there who want to see the film and, you know, you can't, you know, if money's tight or anything, I literally have friends who are helping people see this film. So like if they go to my Twitter, they could just like tweet me or whatever, and I'll send it to them. Like I can't do it for everybody, but I know I can send it to another couple of people tonight, and probably tomorrow, maybe another 10 people. So my Twitter is CG Peoples. I don't even know how to put that in here.
Right there.
Okay.
Well, I can also type it up.
Neil's gonna help me. CG Peoples, and also can you put the Twitter for the? Oh, you want me to do it?
Yeah, you can do it.
Oh my goodness. CG Peoples. Okay, and then I'll put the Twitter for Neil's Twitter, and then the Twitter for the movie.
Right.
Okay.
Everybody, I was going to say too that the movie, obviously, you can still buy it on Apple, Amazon, Google Play. We have a lot of virtual cinemas. Channing's putting in the information for our Twitter handle for Juneteenth, Miss Juneteenth, and that is like updated every day with new places to watch the movie. If you have questions, you can just add Juneteenth movie, and you know they get answered. Yeah, we are here and excited. I think you misspelled Juneteenth.
Did I spell Juneteenth?
Yeah, you did.
Oh, ignore what I said, please, y'all.
Okay.
Okay, it's been a long journey.
Long day.
Thank you. Go by Neil's. Don't go by mine, please.
It's all good.
All right, so Luke, I'm sorry I hijacked the moderating of the audience participation, but I felt like it would be easier.
Yeah, no, you're all good, Alex. You're all good. Well, thank you again, Shani and Neil, on behalf of STA and African American Cinema Society for sharing your wisdom and knowledge with us tonight. It was a true pleasure, and thank you again.
Thank you for having us. We are very grateful to be here.
And again, if you want to see the film and money's tight, hit me up. I think I put my CG Peoples deals at Creque, and then where it says Twitter is the correct handle for the Juneteenth movie. Thank y'all.
Thank you all so much.